The banging on the apartment door had a rhythm to it. 3 slow knocks, a pause, then 3 more. Not frantic, not impatient. The kind of sound that meant whoever was on the other side had already decided how the night was going to end and was simply being polite about it. Zara sat on the bathroom floor with her back pressed against the side of the tub and her right wrist pinned against her chest. The pain had moved past sharp and settled into something low and continuous, like a note held too long on a badly tuned instrument. She'd caught her wrist on the edge of the kitchen counter when the first man shoved her away from the door. She hadn't screamed. She'd bitten the inside of her cheek until she tasted iron and told herself to move. She'd moved. Now she was here, on the tiles she'd scrubbed herself 2 weekends ago, holding Ryan's emergency tablet with her good hand, while the Wi-Fi blinked out 1 bar at a time. Whoever was in the parking garage had killed the building's router. She'd Googled broken wrist symptoms long enough to confirm that this was bad before the signal died. 3 knocks. 3 knocks. She pressed her eyes shut and tried to think in a straight line. 6 weeks ago, she had been the head bookkeeper for a chain of 4 mid-range restaurants in the greater Nashville area. She had a desk with a plant on it. She had a system, color-coded spreadsheets, quarterly audits, expense reports filed within 48 hours. She was good at it, better than good. She was the kind of accountant that small businesses prayed for, and then panicked when she gave her notice. She'd given her notice because Ryan asked her to. Ryan, who told her the restaurant group's silent investor was willing to bring her on as a private financial consultant at 3 times the salary. Ryan, who told her she'd be working from home, just running the books for a few import-export companies. Nothing complicated, just clean accounts and clear margins. Ryan, who told her it was legitimate work, and she'd believed him because she loved him, and because she was tired of being the only person in her life who actually knew how money worked. She'd been processing accounts for 6 months before she noticed the pattern. $60,000 disbursements that didn't match the listed suppliers, shell companies in Delaware with identical filing dates, a distribution schedule that aligned with nothing in the actual supply chain. She'd confronted Ryan on a Tuesday evening with a printed spreadsheet and a highlighter. He'd told her she was overthinking it. He'd told her to let him handle it. He'd kissed her forehead and made pasta, and she'd told herself she trusted him. She'd been an idiot. The men showed up at 9:15 on a Wednesday night, 2 of them, suits. One had a scar below his left ear that looked like a burn. They hadn't broken the door down. They'd knocked, and when Ryan answered, the taller one had said, "Mr. Frey is requesting the balance." Not asking, requesting. Ryan had looked over his shoulder at Zara. In that single second, that microscopic, horrible moment, she had seen it in his face, not panic, not guilt, calculation. He'd looked at her the way a chess player looks at a piece they've already decided to sacrifice. She didn't wait to find out what he was going to say. She grabbed the tablet off the counter, stepped backward into the hallway, and ran for the bathroom. The man with the scar grabbed her wrist. She yanked hard enough to pull herself free and hard enough to feel the crack, and she locked the door behind her and sat down on the floor and listened to Ryan's voice go smooth and quiet and cooperative on the other side of the apartment. Then the front door opened. Then it shut. Silence, except for the knocking. She opened the tablet. She went to Ryan's contacts. The screen was at 4% battery and climbing down by the second. She scrolled through the list with her thumb, looking for anything that resembled an exit. His mother, his gym, his dentist, a series of names she didn't recognize with no last names attached, just initials and numbers that looked like burner phones. And at the very bottom of the list, added separately, not alphabetized, saved under a single word, Cassel. No first name, no context, just the number and beneath it in the notes field, 2 words Ryan had typed and apparently never deleted, last resort. She almost didn't call it. She sat there for 45 seconds. She counted, thinking about what it meant to dial a number labeled last resort from a man who'd just fed her to a room full of debt enforcers, What kind of person would pick up? What kind of debt that call would put her in? Then the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was so complete, she heard her own pulse. She dialed. It rang once. The line opened on the second ring with no greeting, just the ambient sound of a large, quiet room, a faint hum of something electronic, the distant murmur of rain against glass, and the unmistakable feeling of someone listening. "I don't know who you are," Zara said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. "My name is Zara Moss. I found this number in Ryan Gable's contacts under last resort, and right now I'm locked in a bathroom in his apartment, with a broken wrist and 2 men in the hallway who are not leaving. If you're not someone who can help me, I need you to say that right now so I can stop wasting the last 3% of this battery." The silence on the other end stretched for exactly 4 seconds. Then a voice came through, low, even, with the texture of something that hadn't been raised in a very long time because it had never needed to be. "How many men?" Not a question, a calculation. 2 that I saw, there might be more outside. Are they in the apartment? Hallway, outside the bathroom door. Where is Gable? Gun. He walked out with them, I think. I didn't hear him come back. Another pause. Shorter. She heard the distant sound of something being set down on a hard surface. A glass, maybe, or a phone. What floor? 7C, the Meridian on West End. "Don't open the door," the voice said. "Don't speak to them if they speak to you. Sit against the wall to the left of the door frame, not in front of it. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The line went dead. Zara stared at the blank screen. The battery died 6 seconds later. She shifted to the left of the door frame and sat with her knees drawn up and her broken wrist propped against her stomach, and she waited. 13 minutes passed. Then she heard voices in the hallway, not the low, patient negotiation of men who held the leverage, but something else. Something that had the hallway men going suddenly, completely quiet. There was no shouting, no scuffle. Just a brief exchange of words she couldn't make out through the door, and then footsteps, heavy, measured, and then nothing. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, entirely different cadence. "It's clear. Come out, Miss Moss." She opened the door. The man standing in the hallway was not what she'd expected, though she couldn't have said exactly what she had expected. He was tall, not imposingly so, but tall enough that the hallway seemed slightly smaller with him in it. Dark suit, no tie, a jaw that looked like it had been set in concrete. He had a scar cutting diagonally through his left eyebrow that someone had stitched carefully enough to minimize, but not carefully enough to hide. His eyes were a color that was almost black in the hallway light, and they moved across her with the swift, impersonal precision of a man reading a balance sheet. They stopped on her wrist. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then walk." He didn't offer her his arm. He stepped aside and let her go first, and walked 1/2 step behind her the entire way to the elevator, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through her thin sweater, far enough that it wasn't crowding. The hallway was empty. The 2 men were gone. She didn't ask where. A black Escalade was waiting at the curb with the engine running. A second man, broader, with a shaved head and a stillness about him that reminded Zara of a guard dog at rest, held the rear door open without comment. Cassel got in beside her. The door closed. The city started moving outside the tinted glass. "Where are you taking me?" she said. "Somewhere they can't walk into." That's not an answer. He looked at her for the first time since the hallway, directly, without the clinical sweep he'd done on her wrist. Something shifted fractionally in his expression. Not warmth, something more like adjustment. "My building," he said. "I have a doctor on call. Your wrist needs imaging." "I can't pay for." "I'm not asking you to." She shut up. Outside, the lights of West End blurred past in long amber streaks. She held her wrist against her stomach and stared at the street and told herself she was not going to cry in the back of this man's car. She had not cried when she ran. She was not going to start now. She lasted about 40 seconds. It wasn't a breakdown, it was one tear, quiet and traitorous, that slid down her cheek before she caught it with the back of her good hand. She didn't sniff, she didn't make a sound, but she felt Cassel notice it the way she felt a shift in air pressure, and she braced for something, a comment, a question, the particular brand of uncomfortable male helplessness that men deployed when a woman cried near them. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a folded white handkerchief on the seat between them. Not touching her, not handing it to her, just placing it there. She took it. She didn't say thank you. He didn't seem to expect her to. The building was a glass tower off Charlotte Avenue with a private garage and an elevator that required a key fob and a code. The doctor was already waiting on the 14th floor. A compact woman named Dr. Park with latex gloves and a portable imaging kit she had apparently carried in from somewhere without any visible inconvenience. She confirmed the break in 20 minutes, splinted and wrapped it in another 15, and issued instructions about elevation and anti-inflammatories that Zara mostly heard through a fog. Cassel stood by the window through the entire exam. He didn't look away when the splint went on. He watched the way someone watches a process they've authorized and intend to verify. When Dr. Park left, the apartment was very quiet. It was a real apartment, she noticed, not a hotel suite, not a safe house aesthetic. There were books on actual shelves, organized by size but not color, which told her something she couldn't entirely articulate. A kitchen with things in it, a chess set on the side table with a game in progress, a row of financial newspapers going back 3 weeks, folded along specific articles. "Tell me how long you've been running his books," Cassel said. She told him, all of it, the spreadsheets, the shell companies, the disbursements that didn't match, the conversation with the highlighted printout. She laid it out in the clean, sequential way she laid out any financial discrepancy. Event, evidence, implication. She didn't editorialize. She didn't defend herself for missing it earlier. Cassel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You noticed the pattern in 6 months," he said. 5.5. His last accountant took 3 years. He said it without inflection. By then, she'd signed off on 4 separate transfer approvals she didn't understand. Zara went very still. What does that mean? Cassel stood up. He walked to the desk in the corner and opened the top drawer and removed a manila folder, the kind that looked like it had been prepared, not improvised, and set it on the coffee table in front of her. "It means Gable has done this before," he said. "He targets women in accounting. Skilled ones. The competence makes the fraud harder to trace because the books are genuinely clean everywhere except the specific channels he's moving money through." He paused. "He finds women who want stability, who've worked for it, who trust the person offering it to them because they want the offer to be real." Zara stared at the folder. She did not open it yet. "The men tonight," she said slowly. "They weren't from you." "No." His voice was flat. "They work for Gideon Frey. Gable borrowed against a contract Frey holds, a shipping operation that moves through the same ports my organization uses. When Gable's scheme went sideways, he told Frey that you were the primary account manager, that the ledgers were built under your authorization, that you could be held responsible." The room seemed to tilt very slightly. "He signed documents," Cassel said. "Oralization forms, account access logs, 2 letters of intent, all bearing your signature. Some of them genuine, some of them not." "He forged." "He had originals to copy from. You'd been signing things he handed you for 6 months." No accusation in his voice, just the surgical precision of a man stating facts. "You signed what he told you to sign. In the absence of context, it looks like complicity." Zara pressed her good hand flat against her knee. She could feel her own pulse against her palm. She thought about every form Ryan had slid across the kitchen table, with a pen and a distracted smile. Every document she'd initialed without reading the header. Every time she'd trusted the summary he gave her, instead of reading the full text herself. She was meticulous, careful, the best in every room she worked in. And she had been careless where it mattered most because she'd loved him. The humiliation of it was almost worse than the wrist. "Open the folder," Cassel said quietly. She opened it. The first page was a printed email chain, Ryan's personal account, flagged and printed by someone who had clearly accessed it without his permission. The chain was between Ryan and Frey's finance manager, dated 4 months ago. She read it twice. Then she read the third paragraph a third time. She won't cause problems. She's careful, which is the point. If it comes down to it, the documentation trail leads back to her, and she has no institutional connections to dispute it. It's cleaner this way. The pasta, the forehead kiss, the reassurance that she was overthinking it. She set the folder down on the coffee table with great care, the way she set down anything she was afraid of breaking, and she sat very still. She did not cry this time. What moved through her instead was something quieter and colder than grief, a deep, grinding recalibration of everything she'd understood about the past 6 months. Every memory reformatted under new parameters. She'd thought she was building something. She had been building a fall. He was gone before the men got there, she said. He left the building at 9:03, Cassel said, 12 minutes before they arrived. He'd been in contact with Frey's people since that morning. He told them when to come. He told them you'd be alone. She let out a slow breath through her nose. What were they going to do with me? Frey deals in collateral, Cassel said. The word landed in the room like a stone dropped in still water. Women who are presented as complicit parties, insurance against debts. He has a particular operation on the waterfront for exactly this. She understood what that meant. She was good with numbers, and some numbers were very clear. He handed me over, she said. Yes. To cover a debt he created. Yes. Something behind her sternum went very, very quiet. The part of her that had been waiting for a mitigating circumstance, a reason to believe she'd simply misread the situation, that part closed its file and put it away. She looked up at Cassel. He was watching her with an expression she was beginning to recognize, not cold, exactly, but honest. The kind of honesty that didn't dress itself up in comfort before it delivered the damage. "What do you want from me?" she said. "Right now, nothing." He picked up his glass from the desk. "Tonight, you sleep. Tomorrow, you tell me everything you saw in those accounts. Every anomaly, every number that felt wrong. You know that data better than anyone Gable employed. And after that? That depends on what you decide." "Decide about what?" He set the glass down. "Whether you walk out of here in the morning and take your chances with Frey's people tracking you down, or whether you stay and we address this problem together." "You're giving me a choice," she said. "You noticed 5 months of financial fraud that 3 of my own people missed," Cassel said. "I don't waste assets." A pause that felt heavier than it should have. "And Frey doesn't deserve to collect anything tonight." She looked at the folder still open on the coffee table, at the email chain. At the third paragraph she'd already memorized because she always memorized the things that mattered. "It's cleaner this way." "I want to see the rest of the accounts," she said. "Everything Gable processed through your network. All of it." Cassel studied her. Something moved behind his eyes, not surprise, closer to recognition. "Why?" he said. "Because I built those books," she said. "I know exactly where the numbers don't add up. And if Frey is going to wave my name around as his justification, then I want to know precisely what my name is attached to, so I can start figuring out how to remove it." The corner of Cassel's mouth moved. It wasn't a smile, not quite. It was the controlled, reluctant acknowledgement of something he hadn't anticipated. "Go to sleep, Ms. Moss," he said. "The accounts will be there in the morning." She slept. She hadn't meant to. She'd lain down on the bed in the guest room fully intending to stay awake and useful, and the combination of pain medication and 3 hours of sustained adrenaline pulled her under before she could object. She woke to grey morning light and the muffled sound of a voice from somewhere down the hall. Her wrist ached dully inside the splint. She sat up slowly, oriented herself, and did not, for once, reach for her phone before she'd taken a full breath. She found Cassel in the kitchen at 6:40 in the morning. He was standing at the counter with a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other, wearing a dark grey Henley with the sleeves pushed up, reading something on the screen with the same focused intensity he apparently brought to everything. The tattoos on his forearms were dense and dark, and she didn't stare, because she'd been raised not to stare, but she noticed them, the way she noticed everything that carried information. He looked up when she came in. "Coffee," he said, gesturing toward the pot. She poured herself a cup and sat down at the kitchen table, and they were two people in an apartment at 6 in the morning in a silence that should have been uncomfortable, and somehow was not. "He called last night," Cassel said, setting his phone face down on the counter. "Frey." Zara wrapped both hands around her mug carefully, protecting the splint. "What did he want?" "The outstanding balance from Gable's contract. 42,000. Cassel's voice was level. "He said if the balance isn't cleared by end of business tomorrow, he wants the collateral instead." He paused on the word the same way she had. He used that word. "What did you say?" "I told him to call back." He looked at her directly. "Now that you're awake, I can tell him something else." She met his eyes across the kitchen. She thought about the woman she'd been 7 months ago, the one who'd wanted a color-coded system, and a man who came home at the same time every night. The one who'd confused predictability with safety and called it a good life. That woman had been reasonable. That woman had done everything right. That woman had ended up on a bathroom floor with a broken wrist, used as a line item in someone else's accounting. "Tell him," Zara said, "that the ledgers he's holding with my name on them won't survive forensic review. I know exactly where the discrepancies are. I know how Gable structured the shell accounts and which disbursements were flagged internally before the signatures were added." She set her mug down with a quiet, deliberate click. "And tell him I'm currently sitting in your kitchen, which means if he wants to collect on anything, he'll have to go through you to do it." Cassel was quiet for a moment. "You understand what you're saying," he said. "I'm saying I'm not collateral," Zara said, "and I'm not hiding." Something shifted in his expression, slow like the turning of something very heavy, not surprise, closer to certainty confirmed. He picked up his phone, he dialed, he waited 2 rings. "She's here," he said when the line picked up. His voice was the same low register it always was, but it had acquired a particular quality, the kind of quiet that rooms go before lightning. "She's not merchandise. Gable's documentation is compromised, and you'll hear from my legal team by 10 a.m. A pause, listening. Then, Frey. Half a register lower, the temperature in the kitchen dropped. "The woman is not a negotiating point. She never was. She's under my protection, which means your claim doesn't exist. If your people set foot in this city looking for her again, the 42,000 will be the least expensive problem you have." He ended the call, set the phone on the counter. Zara exhaled slowly through her nose. "That's not going to be the end of it," she said. "No," he agreed, "it won't." "What happens now?" He refilled his coffee and sat down across from her at the kitchen table for the first time. Not standing at the counter, not positioned near the door, sitting at the same level in the same light. "Now," he said, "you tell me everything you remember about those accounts. Every number that felt wrong, every disbursement that didn't match, every shell company name you saw twice in places it shouldn't appear." He pushed a legal pad across the table and set a pen beside it. "You said you built those ledgers. Let's see what you can take apart." She looked at the blank page, at the pen, at the man sitting across from her who had come at midnight without asking for anything in return, who had sat beside her in the dark without filling it with noise, who had placed a handkerchief on the seat between them and let her decide what to do with it. She picked up the pen. "Column 1, she said, "is going to be long." The rain against the kitchen window was steady and unhurried. His pen moved, hers moved, and somewhere across the city, Gideon Frey was being handed a problem he hadn't prepared for. Not a line item, not collateral, not a woman who could be filed away in someone else's ledger. a bookkeeper who knew exactly where every number was buried, and who had finally decided to use it.